This is Todd, Hollis. Welcome to another episode of Civil Action. Today, we probably all, we're focused on the presidential election, the Senate race in Georgia, and all the crazy things that have been ensuing since then. But what you may not have recognized is that there's a very important race going on right here in Allegheny County to determine who sits on our bench for Allegheny County Judge. And I am proud to say that I have some of the hottest candidates right here on my show to introduce themselves and their platforms to you. Guys, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with me today. And I have Mrs. Nicola Henry-Taylor, I have Mrs. Lisa Middleman, and I have Mr. Wiliam Caye. Wiliam, I'll tell you from the outset, brother, you're outnumbered. So I can't promise you anything, but we're going to do our best to get through it as guys, all right?
I'm outnumbered every day when I go into court.
Then this should not be an unusual circumstance for you. Guys, I thank you for coming on my show. This is, really unique that we have this social media platform, where, our constituents can actually have an opportunity to hear you, to see you, to possibly make a connection. And, in a lot of ways, to hear things that they wouldn't get, if they just simply watched a commercial or read a TV advertisement or something of the like. So I welcome you to my show. How are you?
Great.
Good afternoon.
Wow.
Awesome. Nicola, I've known you for a very, very long time. I'm going to ask that you, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience, your legal experience.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much for having all three of us. When I met you at Slippery Rock University, when I was in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and you were in Omega Psi Phi, I never dreamed that we would both be lawyers and I'd be sitting here with my wonderful colleagues, but here we are. So for those, yes, we are. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicola Henry-Taylor, and I'm one of the candidates for the Court of Common Pleas for Allegheny County. I've been a practicing lawyer for approximately 25 years, and in that time, I have had the opportunity to work in every division that we have, and that includes family division, criminal division, orphans court, and civil division. I now focus on family and criminal law. And one of my favorite things to do as a family law attorney is when the court appoints me to be what's called a guardian ad litem, to represent children's best interests. I am running for judge because after being a prosecutor, running the mental health court, having had an opportunity to do family law and to work on cases where I'm advocating for parents, and sometimes in the Superior Court, sometimes I'm doing criminal cases in federal court as a CJA panel attorney, I have found reverence for the bench where I see really good judges. I believe that my legal experience, my integrity, and my involvement in the community and the Bar Association qualifies me to be a judge, and I received a rating of highly recommended from the Bar Association. I'm looking forward to talking to you all and letting you know a little bit more about me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Wiliam Caye.
Thank you for having me today. I'm honored to be on your show with some very significant colleagues of mine that I have the utmost respect for. And absolutely. I can tell you a little bit about myself personally and professionally and sort of why I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas for Allegheny County. I'm a Pittsburgher through and through. I was born, raised, and educated in the city in a working class neighborhood. I was the first to attend college in my family, and I graduated Duquesne University, a magna cum laude. I then was the first in my family to attend law school, and I participated there in trial advocacy, and I was an editor on the magazine that the students produced and won several awards called Juris. I was shaped in the practice of law and in the faith of the profession by my godfather, who was an attorney, and my mother, who worked in the practice of law for several trial lawyers back in the day. These folks did things the right way for the right reason. They represented folks who had suffered and experienced grievous injustices and personal injuries and commercial litigation. I've clerked for some of those distinguished trial lawyers, and it led me to the judiciary, which was my first job in law school, clerking for Chief Justice Dawn Ziegler in the federal court. And I was tasked with the assignments of dealing with discrimination, employment, age, sex, race, and also prisoner litigation involving cruel and unusual punishments in our prison systems. I then left there and became an assistant district attorney. Professionally, I had always thought to myself that as a prosecutor, the ultimate standard is justice and being equitable and fair to all the people, and not rushing to judgments, but investigating, conducting your due diligence, and trying to then be fair in terms of a disposition, not just seeking convictions or incarceration. I then started my own practice of law, and I was tasked separately to actually clerk for then Judge Baldwin, who then shortly thereafter became Justice Baldwin in the Court of Common Pleas. And we were assigned at that time to the family division as well as the civil division. And when we were in the civil division, Judge Baldwin entrusted me with running the courtroom day-to-day activities, fielding the docket, making sure that the litigants were taken care of, researching the law, and supervising the other law clerks that would then help her and assist her in writing draft opinions, orders of court. I was trying cases primarily in criminal and juvenile court, and that's where the bulk of my life's experience has been, both on prosecution and defense side. I was requested by then Attorney General Tom Corbett to join his office, and I worked my way up from deputy prosecutor to senior deputy, and I was in charge of several different investigative units, most notably the child predator unit, dealing with sexual assault cases and undercover investigations to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation. Since I left office, because I had run for this Court of Common Pleas seat back in 2015, I started a consulting business where I deal with government affairs and public relations in the communities. There's 130 municipalities in Allegheny County, and I've reached out with my team to try to understand the societal impacts, the disenfranchisements, the marginalization of these communities to solve problems in a respectful and professional way. That is the sum and substance of my professional and personal background. I'm a proud father of two. I have my oldest getting ready for college. My wife, my partner, my deputy chair of my campaign committee. She teaches with special needs children in South Fayette, where we currently live, and we've resided there in the township of South Fayette for the past 15 years. As far as some of my quasi-judicial experience, I've been an arbitrator, I've been in alternative dispute resolutions, and I've sat as a Board of Standards hearing officer dealing with code enforcement appeals in our local jurisdiction here. So I look forward to the discussion. And again, I'm appreciative of you having me on the show with such esteemed colleagues. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Ms. Middleman, how are you?
Good, Todd. How are you?
I'm great. I've known you for at least 20 plus years. So why don't you tell your constituents, your potential constituents, a little about who you are and what your legal experience has been?
Okay, so a little plug. If you want my full biography, it's on lisamiddleman.com, which is my campaign website.
Thank you.
To tell you a little bit about my experience. The thing that shaped me, I think, in deciding to do what I do for a living is an experience I had when I was a law clerk at the public defender's office, which was a long, long time ago. It was 1987. So I'm significantly older than most folks. But at any rate, one of the things that I had to do was prepare post-trial motions on a homicide case. There was a young man who was intellectually disabled who had been convicted of first-degree murder. He had a terrible lawyer whom he paid $300 and who I believe drank through most of his trial. Anyway, this young man was convicted of first-degree murder. And I wrote post-trial motions asking for a new trial for those reasons. The attorney who argued the motion was successful, and the judge granted him a new trial and appointed him an attorney who, Mike Witherall, who was fantastic. Mike tried the case and got this young man an acquittal on his homicide case. So he went from looking at a life sentence and being sentenced to life in prison to being free. And that's when I decided that I wanted to spend my life making sure that everybody who went in front of a judge or was involved in the legal system had the very best chance at a fair outcome. And so I was entitled to a private practice because when you started way back when at the public defender's office, you had the right to a private practice. And my dad was a lawyer. So I did family court cases for him. I did some civil cases for him. I've never appeared in the orphans court division. We did juvenile cases. But my true love was the public defender's office. And so I started off doing regular preliminary hearings, summary cases, disorderly conducts. Then I graduated to misdemeanors and felonies. And over the course of my career, I've become homicide counsel. So I try homicide and death penalty cases for the public defender's office. And when you try death penalty cases, they're obviously the most serious and complex cases there are. I had to perfect a knowledge of the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure that are vital to anybody who's practicing law in any division. And so I have 35 years of experience with those. But when you have an individual who's facing the death penalty, one of the most important things that you do is investigate their background and their history. Because I have found over the course of 25 years of doing those types of cases that if a jury can understand why an individual has committed a horrible crime, they're less likely to sentence him to death. And as part of that preparation, I go back and I get records from juvenile court, from substance abuse treatment, from mental health treatment. I get CYF records to find out if this was an abused or abandoned child. I get records to see if they were a victim of trauma or they've been a victim of crime. And so as a result, I have years and years of experience of trying to figure out what it is that we're doing wrong in our criminal legal system. And I think that has been probably the most important learning experience that I've had in terms of being an attorney. I do have some experience in the civil legal system. I know, for example, and I've read that your typical simple civil lawsuit will cost $10,000. We're disenfranchising people and we're keeping people who are financially unequipped. We're keeping them from having their fair say in all of the systems in our current legal system. The juvenile courts are also in need of some reform and some change. We've had the same recidivism rate in the juvenile court system at least since 2007. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but it's always approximately 20%. And those are the children that need help. They need assistance. They need support. We have a great need for more trauma-based or trauma-informed care for juveniles. There are just a lot of reforms that are necessary. And once again, you can see my platform for those on my website. I ran unsuccessfully for district attorney in 2019 because I saw a need for reform and change in the criminal legal system. And at that time, that was the change that we could make. I was unsuccessful, but I've never deviated from my desire to make the legal system, whether it be civil, juvenile, criminal, family division. I've never deviated from my drive and my desire to make those divisions fair and equitable for anybody who comes before them.
Awesome. Awesome. I've known, just about each and every one of you, I believe, for at least 20 years. I've watched you practice, and as I, kind of looked at the panel, I said, this is one of the few times when I can actually say that you guys are real trial lawyers. Not somebody who is just simply, an attorney who decided, I would like to be a judge. No disrespect to those that don't have trial experience, but it's good, that each and every one of you guys have had, a practice where, you understand what the complexities are, for attorneys and for individuals who may be disenfranchised. And, you've been in our court systems, for a very long time. And I think that, your approach to the practice of law, I think is honorable. So, I am certainly honored to have you here today. I know that, you guys have very busy schedules with your respective campaigns kicking off, so I can't thank you enough for taking time out, to hang out with poor little me today. But it's not about me. It's about you. I have participated in a Facebook poll. You guys are going to like this. All right. So we're going to set the ground rules. I have asked 5,000 of my Facebook friends to tell me what they believe are most important, regarding issues, in our judiciary and what concerns them. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do, starting with Nicola, I'm going to ask you to pick a number 1 through 24, and I'm going to read to you that member's concern, and then Lisa and Bill, after Nicola has responded, if you guys want to add in, or if you don't want to add in, that's fine. But if you feel that you want to add to it, you can certainly feel free to do so. Is that cool?
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, Nicola, 1 through 24. Pick a number.
Sorry about that. I'll pick 4.
You'll pick 4. Okay, great. Josh Allenberg says, establishing a right to counsel in civil defense cases. So what is your position about having an actual right to counsel? Because, you don't have a right to counsel right now. You only have a right to counsel in the criminal division. But what are your feelings about establishing a right to counsel in civil cases?
I would love to know the basis for, what Josh's thoughts are. I know that, so there are some, not necessarily the traditional civil cases that we would think of, but if a parent would be facing termination of parental rights, which is not a criminal matter, they do have a right to counsel because that is a huge liberty. When we're talking about a car accident or a medical malpractice, I don't believe that the court would look at it the same way. So I'd love to have a chat with Josh about what the basis is for believing that there is a right to counsel. I will tell you that family law cases are generally considered civil, and there are a lot of services for women, such as Women's Center and Shelter, and there's neighborhood legal services. And what I have found that there is a gap for men in getting counsel. And I see Lisa shaking her head. That has been concerning to me over the years, because when someone comes to me and they can't afford counsel, and I wish that if everyone who wants counsel could get it. And obviously we have issues with funding and county budgets and grants, but I do believe there are more resources for women than there are for men. And oftentimes we might see Bill and Lisa and I might see the overlap with criminal when someone is protection from abuse is filed against them, unless it's an indirect criminal contempt where they may have jail implications, they do not get counsel. The public defender's office will represent them in those types of matters with the ICCs, the indirect criminal contempt. So I'd like to talk more, but from just what I understand, I know that we have some gaps in some areas that are civil and not considered necessarily criminal, where you have a constitutional right to counsel. But if Josh would like to engage with me understanding exactly what he's getting at, I'd love to. And hopefully I hit upon some points where I do know that we could do some better work in making sure that everyone, regardless of gender, race, age, any of those groups would have the opportunity to proper representation.
Awesome. Bill, Lisa?
Well,
Todd, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Bill. I think that's what I was alluding to when I was talking about the case, the average cost for even the most simple civil case. We've had cuts to the Legal Aid Society in the last few years, which means that they have the ability to represent or help fewer people in the types of civil matters that Nicola was talking about. A constitutional right would be a very difficult and probably unsuccessful request. You do have the right to an attorney, but I suspect that what Josh is talking about is that we have a provision that provides a free attorney. That will be very difficult, particularly in light of the fact that we are wasting money and throwing away money on incarcerating folks. And I'm not sure how many people know that it costs about $45,000 a year to send somebody to a state correctional facility. If we were to make reforms in the criminal legal system, you might be able to actually spend some money and time and energy in focusing on reforming some of the other legal systems.
Okay. Bill?
I look at a opportunity here out of this crisis of lack of resources to properly allow individuals with grievances or to defend such grievances across all different categories of law, whether they be juvenile, family, civil, criminal. One of my proposals, and I'm in agreement with Lisa and Nicola on reallocating funding that's being wasted, and coupling that with some leadership initiatives for law students to get hands-on mentoring and preceptorships in our system, which I think would also greatly manifest or enhance our community services, such as the neighborhood legal services or the women's shelter type services that Nicola talked about. The foundations, the grant monies, the inequities of funding public defender systems are all on this ballot for judge, for Court of Common Pleas. Although many of the fixes do take legislative initiatives, I think people of our leadership and caliber of character and service to people would understand that what's going on now is not helping a lot of people that are hurting. So I would be in favor of looking at judicial administration and bringing out some of these programs back into the community and to be more proactive to drive the costs down, but also to give other people and stakeholders the opportunity to participate in a more transparent justice, a justice that gives every citizen every opportunity to have equality under the law. Thank you.
All right. Josh Allenberg, you just heard, three of our potential candidates respond to you. And I believe Ms. Nicola has even said, if you want to engage with her, you can certainly feel free to do so. I do know that she has a social media platform as well. So perhaps you can reach her through me or you can reach her directly. All right, Mr. Caye, please do me a huge favor and pick a number 1 through 24 with the exception of number 4. 21. 21.
Roberto
right,
Clemente, I have to go with it.
It's a good number for a good guy. All right. It says revising the prisons. Well, Lorraine says revising the prison system into a rehabilitation program similar to Norway, law enforcement reform. Now, I know this is an interesting question for you because you have a brother in law enforcement, right?
And Tammy, my wife, was in corrections. So it's a 2-part question, and I have a unique perspective on those 2 parts.
All right. Take it away, brother.
Well, for many times in my career, on both sides, prosecuting and defending, I've had the opportunities to visit correctional facilities. I currently visit correctional facilities. I'm a hands-on, roll up your sleeves types of an advocate. And what I don't see happening in whether they're juvenile detention facilities or adult detention facilities is the ability to have access for family support and for treatment programs. It's really appalling. And my heart goes out to these folks because they're human beings. And we're there to help human beings get that second chance at life. So I think that dealing with the population the way that it's currently configured isn't working. I would start looking at creating compartments or bins of specialty type facilities to create jobs, to have ownership of our correctional facility, to eliminate the private sector incentives of this pipeline of incarceration. I also believe that we have to bring in the expertise and multidisciplinary practices for the psychiatric folks that Lisa was talking about, where many of these individuals are functioning at a very low level of intelligence or cognitive impairment because of undiagnosed or dual diagnosed problems. We also know that there are too many people in the system that are addicted, and that we believe that the appropriate environment for them is not in a correctional facility, but in a facility that's more towards a relaxed, a setting where they can learn a trade or a skill. I've currently, in my capacity as a consultant, looked to bring in building trades and other technologies so that the individuals that are detained have an ability to then come back into the system with proactive and productive skills. As far as the second part of the question with regard to law enforcement reform, I've also looked at it as a front end and a back end problem. We have law enforcement on the front end and we have prosecutors on the back end. And then ultimately we have judges and parole and board of pardons people. I think we really need to have like a summit and put all the stakeholders at a particular point where they can discuss intelligently how one move on the front end can affect something on the back end in an adverse way, and vice versa. A move on the back end can certainly have repercussions on the front end. Again, a lot of these fixes require some legislative intervention and oversight, but I certainly feel that people that have the background and the training and experience in dealing with law enforcement and police can get it right for the right reason. Again, we have very concerned citizens in all of our communities of any color, of any specific ethnic background, and they have to be listened to. I think people that elect people to office have that right to be heard and to be understood. And we have a duty of care to these people. And we have to make sure that everybody's doing their job. That's what critical oversight and accountability and public service means to me. And so if they're just going to be told something because it's popular or it's the right thing that people think that that's what they want to hear, I'm not that candidate. I'm going to do the hard work. I'm going to do the investigations. And I'm going to come to balanced and reasoned positions that create a common ground where both sides can feel that they've gotten justice. And as one of my clients in the correctional system tells me every day when she calls, I know that you'll get me the real justice that the law affords me. So I'm appreciative of that opportunity. I think it's a great question. And I know my colleagues will do the right thing in that regard also. Thank you.
All right. Nicola or Lisa, do you guys have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay. Nicola?
I would just like to add a little bit. I also come from this from a couple of different perspectives. My husband is a retired prison guard from SCI Pittsburgh after 30 years. So, and being an African-American in that setting, I understand the dynamics that go on and what it's like to worry about an officer when they're coming home. But I also come from it from the perspective as a current defense attorney and a former prosecutor who handled the mental health court program. And that is a phenomenal example of a problem-solving court that's dealing with people that Bill described that have co-occurring disorders. Some of these people not only have mental health diagnosis, they may have at the same time a substance abuse, they may have environmental factors such as they may be homeless. There are a lot of factors that they're dealing with. And what I loved about mental health court, and I think we can duplicate more throughout our judicial system and our society, is multidisciplinary and multi-systemic, where we're being intentional rather than allowing implicit bias and systematic bias to cause people to remain in jail. So here's an example.
Yeah.
There might be a person who, if they had a system that was set up properly, like mental health court, where the social worker is working with their Social Security disability income to get that put back on so they could get back into the community, so they could get housing, and they're working with getting treatment set up at Mercy, that person is going to be much more successful than someone that gets thrown into jail. And because Mayview and places like that are closed, we no longer have those places to deal with people's long-term problems. And other facilities where there's a funding issue with smaller treatment, we don't have those resources. As it relates to the police, I would say one of the things that we really need to do more of is training. And making sure they're picking the proper people. I mean, if you guys are watching the news, you see if we're getting people who are out there saying they're neo-Nazis and they're not being sensitive to different people's cultures, different people's issues. A good example is that young man that used to play the violin. He's walking along, and the way they approach him with no regard to the fact that this person might not be a person that is going to be harmful, and it ends in his death. It's heartbreaking. So if we could try to look more at getting the right police in there, getting the right training, dealing with implicit bias, and having proper policies and procedures as it relates to use of force, and maybe utilizing social workers where they're appropriate while maintaining safety. Those are some things. It sounds like a lot of things because we have a lot of work to do in America, really.
Sure.
You know what, Todd? I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of things that Nicola said that are very important. And one is the use of the specialty courts. People have, way back when they first started 20 years ago, they were a tremendous thing. But there is a fundamental flaw in each and every one of them, which is that in order to enter into those programs and any of those specialty courts, you have to be able to commit crime. We need to assess whether the necessity for a guilty plea with its attendant problems, such as making you unemployable, causing you to lose your public housing, all of those things are really a necessity, or can we just get the people the help that they need without requiring that guilty plea? And they've done some tremendous work. It's just almost as if you do all this work and you help people and you build them up and you get them to a point where they can be successful, but you also saddle them with a criminal conviction that is going to make them ultimately unsuccessful. And they all also come with incredible court costs and fees, which is another area of attention that we really, really need to do some reform, because we are funding all of our systems on the backs of poor people who can't afford to pay their fines and fees and costs. And that ends up having them extended probations, because none of the current judges appear to want to let people off their probation until they pay court costs. So they're in debtor's prison until they pay the system that has wrecked their futures. Additionally, I will disagree, though, with regard to the police. I think it's very clear from the actions of the police officer, and this is just one police officer, but I think the police officer, the Capitol police officer that so bravely diverted all those folks that were running up the stairs. And I'm not going to mention his name because I understand he's gotten some threats, but he was able to, I think we all have seen the story with it, he was able to, using his head and his mind and his intellect, divert people who were there to try to get into the Senate chamber. He was able to divert them so that they eventually walked right into the arms of other waiting police officers. So maybe I don't entirely disagree, because that officer used his mind and his training and his intellect rather than his gun and his fist and his stick.
Sure.
We do need, and I absolutely agree with Nicola, we need to do more to weed out those folks that have issues with violence, issues with substance abuse, who have racial biases, whether they be explicit or implicit, so that those folks do not become police officers. And we can't, hopefully we won't be able to lobby because we will be judges, but we need the people who are listening to lobby their legislators to introduce more bills, like the use of force bill that Ed Gainey and Summerlee and some of the other more progressive legislators have proposed to. We're in trouble because the Senate is controlled by Republicans who are not particularly interested in some of the legislation, but we can put political pressure on people to legislate as is appropriate.
Absolutely. I've been on the bench for a significantly long period of time, and I've seen a lot. I've seen good police, I've seen bad police, I've seen good lawyers, I've seen bad lawyers, I've seen good judges, and I've of course seen bad judges. So all of your comments and your perspectives come, from your many years, in practice, and you guys, just have such a multitude of talent and experience, which is why I believe that it's really important for our constituents to hear that. It's one thing, to see a plaque, sitting in somebody's yard, but, unless you know their story behind it, it's tough to, to make that, that leap when you're at the poll, because you really don't know the candidate. Moving right along, Lisa, this is your opportunity to choose a number. Of course, one that hasn't already been selected, 1 through 24. What do you say?
11.
11. I like 11.
We'll see if I do, right?
Huh?
Now we'll see if I do.
I think you'll like it. You'll like this one. Okay, it says Jeff Biggie Small. I guess he couldn't say Smalls, but Jeff Biggie. Yeah, I like Biggie Small. Jeff Biggie Small says, actually make it legal for a jury of our peers that look like us. Well, Jeff, it is legal, but that's what Jeff says. Do you have a response to Jeff?
Wow, I did pick a good number because back when I first started, and I cannot remember, I think that Batson came down in 1986, which was the year that the year before I graduated from law school, that says that prosecutors cannot strike people from jury panels merely because of race. And when I first started, I did note that the district attorneys were striking disproportionately Black people from jury panels. From my conversations with folks who were DAs at the time, they were being instructed to do so because it was felt that Black jurors would be more sympathetic to defendants in criminal cases. I did, over the course of my career, notice that African-American people or people of color were disproportionately not represented on jury panels. And so myself and another attorney in our office, Chris Patarini, we commissioned a study from a statistician. His name was Dr. John Carnes. He's dead now, but we designed questionnaires that were given to each and every juror who came in for jury duty. This was back, I believe it was 2001, 2002. And he took the data that we recovered and he did a statistical analysis of the veneer, which is the pool of people who show up every day for jury duty. And what he found was that although the African-American population at that time was 10% of the population of Allegheny County, only about 4.5% to 5% of the people who actually came for jury duty were African-American. So when you do the numbers, and don't ask me how, because math is not my strong suit, but what he found was that we had half as many African-American people in jury pools than you would expect based on population, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I did was I started filing motions to ensure representative veneer, which were basically just motions to say that I want a cross-section of Allegheny County to choose from. I don't want your all-white jury. And one of the cases that broke my heart was a young man who was convicted of second-degree murder for a robbery shooting of a white man. He was Black. And as I noted to the judge, you have a white judge, you have a white attorney, You have a white district attorney, an all-white jury, and you have a bunch of white folks coming in here to testify against this kid to get him convicted of murder. He's got to feel like he's in Alabama in 1930. Now, the court administration has taken some steps to try to alleviate that problem in the years since we litigated, and we litigated it in a number of cases. But I do not think that we are anywhere close. I mean, you can go into that jury room, and Nicola and Bill know, on any given day and find a sea of white faces. And it's just not as it should be. We have to find more and better ways to encourage people of color to want to participate in the criminal legal system. I can understand, given the historically systematic racial bias that is part of the system, why people would not want to participate. But only when we have full representation of all people in our system can it actually approach being fair and equitable.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Nicola, Bill, anything to add?
I would love to add. I think that was a perfect question for Lisa. I agree. And I've heard a lot of great things from my good friend, Lena Henderson, who's in the public defender, about that work. And, you know, it's interesting because in 2020, we saw some issues that happened with the judge and a jury in Allegheny County that made, it was nationwide. And I think it highlighted for us the importance of diversity in every part of our justice system. And when those jurors, those brave jurors, those few that come, they do appear, they should feel as if they're appreciated and they are a part of something sacred in our governmental system. So here's some things that are being done that, so there's under the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, there is a commission called the Pennsylvania Interbranch Commission on Racial, Gender, and Ethnic Fairness. And one of their subcommittees deals with juries. And there are other states in America who have gotten this right, and they're doing better, and they're best practices. So some of the things that that committee is looking at is voter education, being creative about how are we getting our jurors. I believe some states might actually, when you go and you sign up for a license, you may be considered for jury duty. We're doing the same thing that we've been doing for many years, and I don't think we're getting a different result. So number one, we want more people to come to jury duty. We want people to be educated on the importance, because I've been called for jury duty, never picked because my colleagues say, no, we don't want her. But I've heard the complaints sometimes of some people there, and I want them to know we appreciate you when you come and we need you. If it was your child sitting there and facing, and we have said as counsel with people facing a serious jail time and serious consequences for felonies on their records that ripple through their whole life, as has been noted previously by both Lisa and Billy, you would want a jury that's there, that's ready, that's informed, that is engaged. And so that's what that commission's doing. And then on a simpler note, couldn't the schools teach more civic engagement? And that's how, as lawyers and judges, we can get involved and we can help to teach and educate anytime that we have the opportunity. So I think that it was a timely question and an important question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Caye?
Yeah. I've been in the situations that Lisa's been in, and sometimes it seems like we were in Alabama, maybe in a central part of the state. As many of you may recall, back in 2015, when I was running for this position, I think I was in rare form in saying that this is a problem that needs to be addressed in a very serious way. And some of the options, some of the solutions to this existing problem here in Allegheny County is that we need to be able to be open-minded to change. We need to have this overhaul of analytics and using smart technology and trying to develop through our educational partners in academia ways that we can target and bring in people from all walks of life. It's just like any other business. And when you're recruiting for a certain individual that's amenable to jury duty, I think we have to open up more pathways to allow people from the black and brown communities, the Indian communities, the Asian communities to come into the jury process. And not just on the criminal side, but on the civil side, because many individuals that are injured that I've represented that were of color didn't feel that that jury gave them the proper reflection of a peer adjudication. So from the legal system, we know that jury service is very looked upon as an obstacle to livelihood. And the costs and the benefits, the rewards are not there. There's no financial incentive. The pay is meager. It doesn't even pay for your cost of parking to come down to Allegheny County. So that's where I think the first part of my community-oriented courts would, I think, allow for greater participation of the marginalized and disenfranchised, the people that have been left out of the process. But also on jury pools, I definitely agree that we have to do a couple of different things that we're not currently doing, including listening to people in academia and educating our younger children before they get into the system so that they can participate as meaningful participants on jury duty. So those are the things that I felt strongly about in 2015. And, I know I'm a couple years older. I have wrinkles and scars and gray hairs, but I'm just not going to talk about this problem. If I'm elected, I'm going to do something about this problem. And I think, again, we have to listen to people of all walks of life to participate in this jury duty. It is one of the most solemn of duties that we can have as Americans. But thank you for the question. It was a great question.
You know, Bill, what you just said is a great segue into my next point. And, basically the reason why we're here today is because, potentially, hopefully, prayerfully, you guys are going to be wearing a black robe, very shortly. And you're going to be hearing these cases and you're going to be, meeting guys like me who are going to have clients who are in the very, positions that you guys just spoke of. And we talked about, judicial tolerance, right? Being able to, accept that, one person's situation may be very different from someone else's, either because of their, their intellectual makeup, their racial, disparity, or a host of other issues. And we need judges, I believe we need judges who are sensitive to those issues. $500 for me, may not be a big deal, but $500 for somebody else, as it relates to a bail, could be the difference between a light bill and somebody getting out of jail, So, I believe that we need judges, who are compassionate, who are sensitive, who are knowledgeable, and, who are willing to listen. So the last question that I have for you guys is, why should our constituents, elect you as judge? And we're going to start with you, Lisa, since we've kind of always, referred to you last. So we're going to start with you, and then we'll end with Nicola.
Well, I would have to say that my 35 years of successfully preparing and trying some of the most difficult and complex cases in courts all over the state, and in directing teams that try those cases, have provided me with the opportunity to research and to present arguments in front of courts about the effects of poverty, joblessness, homelessness, mental health problems, addiction problems, and to argue them and put them in a framework that allows the jury or court to recognize them and give them respect. What I learned, or what I grew a deeper understanding of through my run for district attorney, was the absolute necessity for community involvement in all of our legal systems. Because when you have the support and the assistance of the community, that will not only provide support for the folks who are involved in different legal systems, but it will add respect for the system and allow greater change to be made. My years of experience, and to backtrack on something that you said earlier, I don't mean to be disrespectful to any of the other candidates But I think that trial judges should be trial lawyers. The folks that you're talking to today, Bill, Nicola, and myself, have spent years in courtrooms. We know how a trial works. We know what the rules are. And I think it's time also for someone to be on the bench who has the extensive experience with the people that I have represented. You know, for a long time, the war on crime and the war on drugs and the war on everything caused people to elect prosecutors to the bench. And prosecutors, as we have seen, have not done a very good job of solving the issues that face all of the people that come before them as judges. And particularly the judge that Nicola mentioned demonstrates the pitfalls of thinking that prosecutors are always going to be the best judges. We've never had a public defender that was, so to speak, down in the dirt with the rest. Every public defender that's been elected a judge has been the head of the office or an administrator. I feel like a public defender, and there are a number of them, I believe, who are running for judge, but a public defender who has tried cases, hundreds of thousands of cases amongst us all, those people have the knowledge and the background in dealing with the systemic racism and the effects of poverty and bias that are preclusion for those folks for a fair trial and for a chance at equity in the legal system. So I think that when people are looking for who they want to vote for judge, they should consider whether the person's interest in reform and progress is one that arose in the last 6 months or when they were making the decision to run for judge, or is it somebody who's been fighting for their entire careers for equity and justice and fairness for all people? You know, I've spent my career in service to the Constitution and in service to the people of Allegheny County. And I would like to be a judge because I would like to continue that service in the future and to provide a fair and equitable court for anybody who would come before me.
Thank you. So let me ask you, Ms. Middleman, if somebody wants to find you, do you have a website or a social media platform that you want to refer them to? I
do have a website. It's lisamiddleman.com. I believe I have a Facebook page that I have to find, but I have a personal one, which will probably direct you to my campaign. It's Lisa Middleman for Judge, would be the campaign. I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, but if you really want to learn more about me, I suggest starting at the campaign website, which is lisamiddleman.com. And thank you very much, Todd, for providing me with the opportunity to speak here. And I want to thank Nicola and Bill also for your insightful remarks and for bringing these issues to people's attention and being willing to speak. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Caye.
Thank you. I guess the question is why Caye? And the Caye for Judge Committee will be answering that question. My answer is quite simple: experience, integrity, fairness, and results. I've given a lifetime of service that's been selfless, that's been honest and frank in my communication, and has established a rapport with credible leadership to very difficult and challenging situations to better the lives of individuals. My pledge is to run a solid and respectful campaign, profound with dignity and grace to my colleagues who are running for a similar serious position. I had also want to make it clear that the foremost goal or objective that I have in running this time for judge is to make sure that we have a very fair and equitable system for every citizen, every time, without exception and without prejudice. Will I make mistakes? Will I be sometimes outspoken? Well, if you do not have passion and love for the law and for the people that come before you, you shouldn't be running for this office. If you're afraid of change and resistance from the establishment, you shouldn't be running for this position. I said in the beginning that on this ballot is equal justice, a sense of transparency and listening to the people that we would represent without, again, regard to race, color, sexual orientation, or any other perceived classification. My lifetime of experience brings me on both sides of the legal issues as a plaintiff's and defense lawyer on the civil side, as a criminal prosecutor with senior deputy level experience in major felony and violent crimes, targeting individuals of our most vulnerable members of society. It also segues into the judiciary, being the law clerk, the judge's lawyer, being able to understand both sides of the argument. And now currently as a defense lawyer, I'm very proud of the work that I do in representing indigent folks that have conflicts of interest, that cannot get any satisfaction and legal representation for their problems. Again, just very simply, 28 years of working in the courts, dealing with the problems that are still there, that are systemic, and I'm not proud of that. I'm a lawyer and I'm trying to help people. That's been my goal in my career, to leave a legacy of service, to distinguish myself with grace and kindness, and to leave this place a little bit better. So if I'm elected to the Court of Common Pleas, I will leave that court a little bit better. Thank you.
And Mr. Caye, should our constituents, want to find you so they can learn a little bit more about you, how should they best do that?
Well, I think they should call Tammy, my wife, 412-951-9034, or they could visit our Facebook page right now, which I believe is Caye for Judge. And shortly, we will be using the other multi-mediums that Lisa and Nicola are already on in terms of a website and other social media forums. Again, it might date myself a little bit because I'm learning this stuff as I go this time. But hey, we have to have fun in what we're doing too. We can't always be serious. We've got to understand that people are coming from different perspectives. And again, primarily we need to listen. So again, thank you for having me on the show. I say to my colleagues, Lisa and Nicola, we'll probably be seeing a lot of ourselves on the computer.
You know what, Bill, it's never too late to learn. So to the extent that, you're still getting your website together, more power to you, brother. All right. Last but not least, Nicola.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. I've enjoyed my time with the three of you. In answering the question of why me for Nicola Henry-Taylor for Court of Common Pleas Judge, I'd like to answer the question, who am I? How did I get here? We didn't talk a lot about our background, but I think we weaved a little bit in about it. It's important to know who you're electing. So I am an immigrant. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And the thing that kept me and propelled me from getting involved in trouble was the fact that I knew from 5th grade I wanted to go to law school. That got me to Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania on a full tuition Board of Governors scholarship for kids from the inner city. And I'm proud to say I am a kid from the inner city. Now a mom with my own kids. But I have 2 beautiful adoptive children. And I told you guys that my husband and I've been married for a while, and he's a retired prison guard. My first job out of law school was Judge Justin Johnson of the Superior Court. If any of you know him, he is an example of all that we would want in a court. He comes from trailblazers of Black judges and lawyers in Pennsylvania, and taught me how to be professional and how to have ethics and how to utilize your knowledge and everything that you do. And that gave me the seed of wanting to be a judge. I've also clerked for 2 Court of Common Pleas judges, Judge Alexander, who was the president judge of Clarion County. Yes, the Brooklyn girl went to Clarion, PA and survived hunting season. And I also clerked for Judge Durr in Butler County, and I still love Butler. It is my second home, and I'm there all the time. I live in Allegheny County. I love Allegheny County, and I was a prosecutor here. My office is here. And through my work in family court, doing dependency, delinquency, adult, and all of the things that I have done, I have learned to love the courts. I love when I'm in front of a really good judge who cares about the people in front of them. They care about the litigants. They're respectful. And I want to be that judge. In the history of Allegheny County, we have only had for women Black women to be judges. And that is not where we should be. And we saw from what happened last year that it's important to have diversity. We have to have diversity of thought so people know what's acceptable, so people know to look out for systemic and implicit bias. And I believe that those are very important things that we need to weave into our judicial system, and making sure at every avenue, whether it's somebody coming through a metal detector and may have had trauma and the building guards are not trauma informed, and that could create a whole nother situation, just having the sensitivities that our president Judge Kim Berkeley Clark is trying to put into place. The pandemic threw some things out of whack, but I'm looking forward to this new opportunity for at least 8 new judges, and that we would be active judges. And that's what I'm hearing from our colleagues here, that we don't want to just sit on the bench and proclaim. We want to also, to the extent we can, in collaborating with our community and stakeholders, to make changes. That's my pitch here.
Absolutely. You know, this is such an awesome panel. I mean, you know, I've watched you guys in the news. I've watched your careers develop. I'm listening to you and your background. And I mean, I would vote for each and every one of you. I mean, you guys are amazing, and you certainly deserve, you know, all the accolades for getting to where you are right now. And I'm so appreciative. I mean, this is a good opportunity for many of your potential constituents to get to know you. I mean, certainly, I know that as you continue your respective campaigns, you know, you're going to be doing more of this, and probably on a much huger level. And that will, at least from the beginning, it'll give, you know, people an opportunity to get to know Nicola, to get to know Bill, to get to understand Lisa, because each and every one of you, you know, regardless of how you got to where you are right now, you all have great stories. You know what I mean? So, you know, for all of that, you know, I humbly thank you. I humbly appreciate you being here. I know there are many other places that you could be, but you're right here with me. You know, so, you know, having said that, you know, if you guys want to reach any one of the panel members, I will post their respective contact information, and you should certainly feel free to reach out to them, because they're very, very approachable. And I'm sure that, you know, either, you know, their campaign or somebody in their campaign or the information that they post, you know, will be helpful in allowing you to get to know them when you eventually get to the ballot. So, you know, I thank you all, you know, for being here. And if you like, you know, everything that you guys have seen thus far, you know, please do me a huge favor and hit like, you know, subscribe to my channel, reach out to our panelists, because we want you to be informed. We want you to be educated. We want you to make a good selection. So with all that being said, guys, thank you very much.